Then the paper is peer-reviewed by experts in the field. So the idea is, if I write something, other people who also know about Mongolia, about pastoralism, can critique it. They can say this paper is good, or the methods are bad, or the results don't follow the methods. So when you submit your paper, you'll get many comments on it that should improve the quality of the paper. So for this paper, we actually end up with 5 different reviewers had comments on it. So then we need to address their comments to strengthen, to improve our writing. So before we submit, we are going to try and have other people we know comment beforehand. So Ariel and I read it and comment, but we have also other researchers who can give their opinion to strengthen the paper. Okay. Academic writing, as we've been discussing already, it's writings to inform the reader. It offers factual information on a given subject. It should be linear. It should have a theme. We shouldn't repeat or digress, so we need to stay focused. The writing is structured around a main idea that runs throughout the paper. And this is going to provide arguments to support the central theme. The text should be accurate and correct. And that's one thing that peer reviewers look for, that it's the correctness of the content. And it should be very precise. We should describe things exactly so people understand this. Academic writing, complexity, formality, precision, objectivity, explicitness, accuracy, hedging, and responsibility. So responsibility means we are responsible. We own up to what we write and what we do. So we want to be accurate and explicit. So we don't say between 4 and 6, we say exactly 5. It's being very direct. Now, when I started writing my first draft paper, my supervisor said it was too journalistic. I wasn't being direct enough, and that's something we learn with time. Okay.
Excuse me, what does it mean really this hedging?
Hedging. Okay, so we have findings. They may not be the only findings. So I must acknowledge that this is our results. Somebody else may come to the Gobi and find something different. So it's not like the theory of gravity where Newton says, okay, objects fall through space. So I have to allow that there might be other opinions or other results on the same topic. So I state, this is what we found. I don't say, this is the only answer for something. Other questions? Oh, okay. So academic articles written by experts in the field. And you may not think you're an expert, but already you're Mongolians, you know the countryside, you look at the picture of the horses, you have many opinions, much insight. So you may already be an expert on something compared to me or people in America or Europe. Papers are reviewed and edited by the author's peers. That's peer review. The language is formal. It contains words and terms typical to the field. So we write papers for our intended audience, not for people in England who don't know about Mongolia. So it may not be understandable to people that don't know about Mongolian countryside, but our target is people in this room who know about pasture, about mining. So we have a set audience where we gear our writing towards. Always there's a list of references, something Ariel stressed, and she'll talk about later in the summer school. Scientific literature, it comprises scholarly publications about theoretical work in natural and social sciences. Academic publishing is contributing the results of research to the literature which requires this peer review process. So in generating your topic, it's what can contribute something new. We don't want experiments or research repeated. What is some new angle we can bring to the knowledge? Original research, it's published for the first time in scientific journals. This is the primary literature. First time, some new information. Secondary sources include review articles that may summarize several published findings. So this is one that deals with pastoralism. Somebody else may look at 20 articles written on Mongolian pastoralism and do some analysis. So secondary articles like reviews that summarize findings, advance new ideas about the research, and maybe a book for a large project. Here we have two examples. You should all know this person, right? He's sitting right over here. So look at the title and see what his paper is about. Formation and distribution of pro-capitalist perspectives in Mongolia. So who can tell me what the paper is going to include? Just say it's right there in the words. Where does this study take place? Mongolia. What's the main theme? Pro-capitalism, and what angle is he going to take on this theme? Formation, how it was formed and created, how it's distributed or disseminated, and it's going to be in Mongolia. So this is a journal paper, and I'm going to ask him, what journal is this in? Central Asian Survey. So that is relevant to Mongolia. Central Asia will include Mongolia, Afghanistan, the broader region. That's one angle. Here's a book chapter over here from last year, Social Impact Assessment in Mongolia. And if we look at the title of the book, it's Mining Lifestyles in Mongolia and Kyrgyzstan. So what's the subject here? Social impact. And what kind of social impact? Mining. Okay, it doesn't say in the title, but we know because the book's on mining, it's going to address mining. All right, so the titles already tell us something about the academic literature. Then we can decide if we want to read it. So these will be the two main sources, academic papers, academic books. Okay, then that's us as academics, we present it. However, there are many critiques of academic literature. We want to have a balanced view. This is part of the hedging. We want to encompass different perspectives. And it's not just us, it's the general public. So I'll start with my mother. She says to me after reading one of my papers, Troy, your paper has too many numbers and theories and not enough stories. You tell good stories, what happened? Try again. So this is my mother. She's not an academic, but she has a strong opinion. She wants something more journalistic, but she is not my audience, right? You're my audience. So they say academic writing is boring. We say academic literature expands knowledge. They say there's too much information, not enough story. This is my mother, right? We're trying to give new information, not write new stories. They say it's not catchy like a newspaper or TikTok. And we say we're trying to convey knowledge, we're not trying to entertain. There are too many fancy words. But we say we're writing to a specific audience, experts and specialists. And we're trying to move the world forward into the future with our new information. So by being academic, we have a more finite, a focused audience that we are writing to, and we cannot worry about what my mother's going to say. She's still going to cook me dinner. Okay, also, there should be passion, beauty, enthusiasm, immediacy, and importance in academic writing. It doesn't have to be boring. So maybe close your eyes for a minute and let me just read out some titles and think. Winters Without Women. I mean, what is that? Oh my gosh, I need to hear about it. As a man, that's a very important subject. So it creates an idea in my mind that will be followed up in the paper. Or Afterlife of a Mind. I never thought of a mind as a living thing. But true, when a mind closes, then it has an afterlife. That's interesting. Or maybe the most beautiful, Mongolia, grassland of wisdom, natural beauty. That sounds more like poetry than academics. So I want to read this paper and see what inspired the author. Or maybe Desert Boundaries, the once and future Gobi. And that sounds a bit like mythology, like once and future. So we're going from the past into the future about the Gobi. That's an area I really love a lot. So that makes it interesting to me. The New Mongolian State Herder. Whoa, I didn't know there was a New Mongolian State Herder. Like, we're presenting new information, reinterpreting the past, and then conducting some new analysis. So just think of the passion and the enthusiasm that goes into that. From conflict to community development agreement, a South Gobi solution. So as an outsider, South Gobi solution, I didn't know there were any solutions. So I want to read that paper and find out what they came up with in Mongolia in the South Gobi. Or herders and hazards. That's great. We have the H and the H, herders, hazards. I'm thinking of Zud, drought, locust invasions, things like that. So we may not write to be entertaining, but we can tell an interesting story through academia. Okay, so recently of someone who already has a PhD, an American who I know, he's writing about Mongolian caravans historically, and I send back his paper, say, okay, it's too many terms, but not enough passion. And he writes, oh yes, it's very hard to write academic articles and remember to be passionate about it. So now he rewrites it. So don't lose the sight of your goal and why you did this research. Let's convey that in our academic literature as well. Academic sources. So there are a few, well, many types of academic sources, a few that really matter. One point that's really important is impact factor. An impact factor is an international assessment of articles, and journals will have an impact factor. So if it has an impact factor, the higher the number, the more impactful the journal is. Some would say the better the journal, but I'd say it's more the recognition the journal gets within academics, within one field. So for us at Oxford, we are really pressured, we need to write in impact factor journals because it's a stamp of quality. So also when I read a paper, I want it to be from an impact factor journal because that means it's been peer reviewed and gone through a lengthy process before it's published. So journals will put their impact factor on their web pages because they're very proud of this. So I know many journals. Central Asian Survey is one. So because I know it, I will read the articles that are in Central Asian Survey. So pay attention to impact factor because it implies some quality, and that's important for your writing and your career. Most journals are published by large companies, so you will be familiar with them. And large companies always try to have an impact factor because it makes them more money. So there's an economic driver here. Elsevier is the largest. Comes from Netherlands. Taylor and Francis from the UK. Springer, Germany. Oxford University Press, that's Oxford. Nature out of the UK. Science out of the US. MDPI, which published this journal, out of Switzerland. So just be aware of the context in which you're writing. These journals are all searchable online. So we have access to them. At least we can find them. The question today is there's an open access, which means anybody can find the article on the internet. This publication is open access. So you could search this and download it, give it to your friends. That's fine. The traditional model is that libraries or people subscribe to the journal. And then if I was subscribing, maybe I pay $50 a year, and every month they send me the new edition of the journal. What's very common is universities subscribe. So at Oxford, we have a huge library system, and I don't know, maybe they have 5,000 journals. We have so many different, from medicine to anthropology to remote sensing. So we get them for free because we're part of the system. But you may not have that same opportunity. You know, your university may have different ones, but don't let that stop you. What I really recommend, and I'll mention it later, is if you need to, just write to the author in person. And anytime somebody writes to me saying, I'd like a copy of your paper, I always send it to them because we're very happy when someone reads our paper, right? So be brave, just send them. I'm a student in Mongolia. I'd really like to read your paper. Our library doesn't have access, and most will send it to you. But when we talk about journals, we need to watch out for predatory journals. We'll talk more about this later, but also tomorrow. Then the next source would be books from academic publishers. So we don't want a novel from Random House or Penguin Books. So also pay attention to who's publishing the books you read. Think of what you have maybe in your backpacks. Oxford University Press is the largest academic publisher. Cambridge, Stanford, Muis. We have a book, The Mining Life Cycles, published in Mongolian by Num. So there are many different sources. So use these. You'll have an idea that they've been reviewed, and it's a stamp of quality to be accepted by a good publisher. Okay, now when we're writing and also when we're reading, think about primary sources versus secondary sources. Okay, maybe the most famous scientific book in the world is Origin of the Species by Charles Darwin. You probably all heard about it. It's about evolution. So it was quite radical when it came out in the 19th century. Now it's accepted by everyone but a few Christians in the US. But it's primary research. He went around the world documenting things, taking samples, looking at plants, animals, birds. So he did the study, he generated the data, he did the research, and then he wrote about it. So this is the process we see in academic papers, in books, investigative reports. Think of climate data, research findings. This is primary research. We went, Aaron and I, and we spent weeks and months in Hanbok-Sum. So we found this. It's not that we're reporting what Munku did. You know, this is a primary. The second type of research is secondary. It means you're not the first person who did it, but you're presenting or analyzing or reviewing primary sources. You may interpret it, you may review these papers, you may have a new analysis, but it's not original data. It's an assessment of original data. So here's one, Darwin Puzzle, a computer-assisted analysis of language and the origin of the species. So this author looks at origin of the species, but takes a completely different approach. So she's using computer language, computer-assisted analysis. So she's looking at the language he used, not his findings, but how it's presented. So that's one valid approach to looking at the origin of the species. So it's a new paper, presented from a new way, and if we were linguists or historical people, that might be very beneficial. But for me, I'm not, so I will not read that paper. I would rather read the original and come up with my own ideas. So those are the primary approaches. Also, there's gray literature, which is like a research or a report, but it's not peer reviewed. So it comes from a different approach. Okay, gray literature. Have you heard of this term? Okay, think of gray literature. There's quite a bit of gray literature for Mongolia. And maybe some of you worked for NGOs or international organizations that generate reports or have findings. So this is another good source, but it's not the same as an academic paper. But it's much faster. Like if the UN writes a report, it comes out, it's done, and it's ready in a month or 3 months. A peer-reviewed paper may take a year. All right. So great literature. Material published or made available by organizations or individuals. This can include theory, conference abstracts, government documents, statistical reports, organizational reports, international agencies, personal communication. Heard or told me, something like that. Preprints before something comes out in publication, or maybe a PhD or master's theses. And these are available like through the Oxford system. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of theses that have good information but have not yet been published as a book or an article. Gray literature is not collected in a source like academic literature, so it's harder to find. I'll just search on with the topic and try and find some reports or other information that might be useful. So you have to be creative, maybe use different search terms to find some of these reports and information. It's very helpful for data. Think of economic data. There's lots of information on Mongolian GDP, exports, imports, poverty levels, all that's available. But it's not in the form of an academic article because it's pages and pages, so much information. But as researchers, we can extract what we need. So I like to do this. Think of population. What's the population of Mongolia now? How's it changed over 20 years? Age breakdown by IMAG, breakdown by professions. The National Statistics Office of Mongolia is very good. It is reputable, and I'm happy to use it. So Mongolia has a lot more information than many countries. So that's a valid source that's trusted. And also, it's very useful for climate data because there's reams and reams of climate data for the world from the World Meteorological Organization, but also a lot of computer-generated, gridded climate data. We even cite one in here. So it's very useful if I want to find the temperature of Hanbok in 2000, that tells me that. But there's no paper that I can find that. It's very specific. So use these other sources to help support your argument. And then also the value depends on the institution that generates it. So here we have the World Bank. Well, it's the Mongolian Quarterly Economic Update by the World Bank. So I know the World Bank's been in Mongolia 25 years. I've read many other reports by the World Bank, so I trust their information. I know people like you go out to the countryside and do the measurement. So that's a good supporting source. Now, if it was an internet website from Africa or the US that I've never heard of, I'm not going to trust it the same way, right? So the World Bank or National Statistics Office, those are good sources. But if it's Troy's blog out of the US, you're going to say, who's this Troy guy? So think of that. When you're reading the information, first you need to filter it. So social media, anybody can put anything, right? But something with the World Bank logo, you know, that went through a process. Many people reviewed it in the World Bank before it gets published. So that's good. Okay. finding academic literature. So there are many different sources: Web of Science, Scopus, Google Scholar. I happen to use Google Scholar because it's very easy. You just put in the article or the topic or the name or the year or the country, and articles come out. I'm not always sure how they're ranked, but if you look through, you can usually find something on your topic. And then also, on the Google Scholar, there's a way to check citations, like who has cited this paper, which is another way to find many more articles that might be interesting. And then also there's another column to the right that shows you if it's accessible. So with Oxford, most of them are available. If I click on it, I can see the article and download. So that also tells you how you can access the paper. JSTOR used to be available in Mongolia. It's more for older articles. So it's perfectly good. It's just like Google Scholar or these others, but it features older articles, and usually it's free to download. So also think of JSTOR. There's many articles. If I want an article from 1932 on Mongolia, I can go to JSTOR, and they'll have it. They have some from the 19th century, the 1800s, of von Humboldt coming through Mongolia and what he wrote about traveling through Mongolia. So there's information available there. Also, this is quite nice. Archive, which is for natural sciences, hard sciences, engineering, math. People will post their pre-paper. They put it up there so people can review and comment and improve the paper. So that's something to look at if you do more environmental science, physics, whatever your field is. But archive, and this is should be free also. And these sources include articles and books. And on Google Scholar, it says, the name of the article, citations, like that. And it has a number of citations. So if it has 1,000 citations, that's very, very many. But if it has 10, it might still be some useful information. So the citations tell you how many people have read it and put it in their own paper. So give you some idea of what's popular or been used a lot. And as I mentioned, if you can't get access to an article, feel free to write the authors. And you can look them up. You see, you have their name. You should have their university probably from the search, and you can search that and find their email and send them an email. Okay. So as I said, the information is original, verifiable, and repeatable. Where is this? Any ideas? It's in the Gobi? Okay, now to be more specific, where in the Gobi?
Desert.
In the desert, in the Gobi. We reduced it to half of Mongolia. Hamburg. Okay, we have a zoom in an area, and so we see a road. Where is the road probably going? A paved road in the. What? Are you all going to where? To the mine, but where are they driving? Where are the trucks going on here? The Chinese border. Okay, so just one picture, already we know quite a bit about what we're talking, right? Okay, so use all these clues to understand the research. So this is Land, Volume 11. There are 190 articles in this edition. So why did they choose this as the cover story? Think, why did they like this article? Why did they make it the first article? It's interesting. I think you're right. The reviews were positive, so they know other people thought it was interesting. Why else, maybe?
It was published in 2020.
Yeah, 2 months ago, so very new. But why else might they choose this? Interesting. Most people what? Say that again.
The topic is mostly about
Okay, so the topic, it's original. They do not have many articles on Mongolia. Mining and herding relates to other parts of the world. It's a big issue in Africa, the Middle East. So they think it represents many issues their readers will like. So think of that. Think of your readers and think of how it fits in a more global picture. Okay, so when we think about academic literature, I'd like to talk about the information pyramid. Think of a pyramid, or up there, the reverse pyramid, with different levels of good information. And we'll have a little exercise later on this. So, as you might have seen, the best are academic articles and then academic books, right? These are the ones that have been peer-reviewed and been examined by many people and read by many people, and they stand the test of time, we say. Then there comes gray literature, right? Like a World Bank report on Mongolia. And if you're doing a literature search for your topic and you see there's not enough scientific literature on the topic, maybe your subject isn't appropriate for a paper. There should always be something. Maybe it's not from Mongolia, maybe it's from Africa, or maybe it's on the theme of deserts, or the theme of mining, or development. So see that there's enough information before you spend months trying to write a paper, okay? So that's you as the author gets to decide this and pursue this, okay? Make sure there's enough literature so you can fit your research in the more global picture. So when we write an article, when you write an article, the style is going to be neutral in content and opinion. So if you read this, you might think, okay, they like pastoralism or they like mining, but hopefully you'll say they considered all sides and this is what they come up with. And by the way we write it, we may steer the direction toward herders, toward mining, or maybe toward water. But it's neutral. We didn't say this is good and that is bad. Avoid journalistic writing. So we can't say the herders in Hamburg are amazing and the mine's the worst the world has ever seen. Okay, where's our proof? It's one person's opinion. And maybe some herders told me those exact words, but I need to talk to other herders. Ariel needs to interview 100 more herders. And then we can come up and say something. Considers many perspectives. So the herder perspective is one. The mining perspective is another, right? What about the town dwellers in Hanbok-Sum? That's another. Think about the people next door in Manlaisum. They may have a different opinion. Think of you as Mongolian citizens in UB. You may be interested in the tax revenue generated by the mine. Maybe be more important. Ariel and I might think, well, this is better than the mines in Africa and Papua New Guinea. So there are many possible perspectives. So we want to write so any perspective can take something from the paper. So when you write, see that it's suitable for many different audiences. And that's part of being objective. And we always say robust and repeatable. If you read an article and say, I couldn't do what they did, I don't believe it, then it's not an effective academic argument. So when you're doing your methods, particularly, think of methods that other people could also do. So if you're testing water and you test 50 wells, somebody else could go down to the Gobi and test the same 50 wells, because we give the GPS points, or 50 different wells, and we would expect the quality to be similar. So it has to be repeatable. Just keep that in mind. Thank you. Okay, now here's the pyramid brought to life, right? So think of the different levels of information. Opinion, social media. How useful is social media for academics? Just think about it. Anybody can have their opinion, so it's not useful for Right? When you write your paper and you say, I read it on Facebook, the reviewers will say that doesn't work. So keep that in mind. Subjective. So newspapers, their goal is not science, right? Their goal is to sell newspapers. So they're going to say this is an amazing story. Not very useful. They may have some facts or something that you might want to use, but in general, you want to avoid newspapers, TVs, or encyclopedia. More generally, gray literature that we talked about, reports, then books, and then journal articles. So you go from more general to more specific, from a weaker argument to a stronger argument. So you want to be here within the pyramid. And the types of articles, the standard article, the research article, where you report your research. So that's something like this, okay? Where you did the work and you're reporting new information. Usually these will be about 8,000 words in length. So that's plenty of space to get your main points across. If you want to do more theoretical development, kind of some things Ariel was talking about, maybe you want to write 10,000 words. So before you even start, though, see what the journal requires. Some journals will say only 6,000 words. So know how you should write it, the framing of your paper. Might be a short communication. I like these because for maybe 2,400 words, you get your main point across, and people can read it. And some people will read 2,400 words but won't read the 8,000. Maybe it's a review article that, like I mentioned, takes 20 articles about herding and says something about her. It might be a discussion article. What about the themes? What about the perspective? Maybe we need to reinterpret with a feminist perspective or a decolonialized perspective. So there's rooms to write different types of articles. And then many journals also have a book review. And you can write to a journal and say, hey, I want to review this book by Ariel, and they'll send it to you for free. That's a way to get free books also, and maybe a small publication. Some details about academic literature. Always, we're going to have an abstract. And this is a summary of the topic. And it's important because the reader always reads the abstract first and then decides, should I read the article? That's how I do it. Ariel, did you do that too? It's standard. Very, very quickly, we can see, is this important or is this interesting or not? For this workshop and for the global audience, English is we say lingua franca, the basic language for academics now. So the French don't like it, maybe the Chinese don't like it, but it's just the fact of the matter. So we're all here I'm speaking in English because we want you to write in English for an international audience. As I said, we already have 2 people here that have done this in English. So it's very possible. Anonymous. So most journals, when you submit, they send to a reviewer, they take your names off. So if I get a paper that says Munku on it, I'm going to say, oh, Munku, my good friend. Check, check, check. Accepted. So the journals don't want that. So it should be very objective. And the journals also, you can always write them for information. I'm a student from Mongolia. Here's my topic. Does it relate to your journal? Something like that. The editors are real people. They're academics in China or South America or the US, wherever. So they will answer back. In 2 journals, I give the web addresses here. Nomadic Peoples and Arid Environments. They publish articles on Mongolia. So consider publishing in these. And here's some information on them. Okay, we'll get right there. But when we think of these academic articles, who are these famous writers? Well, who are these famous writers? Who might this be? What? Yes, Aristotle. Now, I think it's amazing that somebody who died 2,500 years ago is still so popular and cited. And Ariel said he comes from the Greek tradition, and it's been the basis of much thought and investigation in the sort of the Western world, and now because of his importance also here in Mongolia we talked about. Any ideas about this? Okay, Mendeley, how about this person?
Right.
Right, and the last?
Cool.
Foucault. Okay, next. And oh, okay, Foucault. This man, he's been cited more than 1 million times. That is amazing. I have never cited him. Ariel, have you cited him?
Yes.
Okay, so Ariel cited him many times, part of the million. I'm still waiting for one day when I can cite him. Okay, and okay, now what it means to cite, if you look in here, the citations are the references. So we make a statement, and there are these people that we see at the back, all these people that we cited that wrote something that relates to our article. So many people write articles, they cite Foucault. So he'll be in this list. In this paper, he doesn't show up. Like read Winters About Women maybe, or one of the others, he will show up. So Ariel will talk about citations, and Monka will in day 3, I think. So citations are important. These are the kings. Where are the queens? You know, why aren't there more women up here? Why are they all Western looking? Now, why don't we see some Asian faces or African faces? So that's some of the debate going on now. So here's one journal I mentioned, Nomadic Peoples. You can search online. You say put in Nomadic Peoples. It tells you about the journal, focus and scope, an international journal, Commission of Nomadic Peoples. Ariel is the chairman of the Commission of Nomadic Peoples. Concerns the current circumstances of all nomadic peoples around the world. So that addresses Mongolia, right? So all in the world, not just Mongolian herders, but all herders. And it's for scholars, researchers, planners, private administrators. So not just academics, but maybe the World Bank will also honor. Okay. And here's the area environments I mentioned. 29 articles in arid environments include Mongolia in the title. So that's a lot of papers. Only 2 are from me. So 27 other people are also writing about Mongolia in this nice journal. So consider this journal. It's more on the environmental or scientific side, but it includes anthropology. And if you go to the journal, it has a list of the topic. It will explain. And this is its statement about international journal, high quality research, original insights into critical scientific, environmental, ecological, and people-nature issues in drylands. Okay, the name arid, we know it's going to be about drylands. Mongolia qualifies. It's to better understand scientific complexes and societal issues. Papers represent rigorous research, specifically relevant to arid lands. And then it says very directly, it must have international relevance. So it's not for a Mongolian audience, it's for a global audience you're writing. Clearly stated aims, hypothesis, or research questions. And we'll talk about more about that. Papers must advance knowledge. So it has to be something that pushes science forward. So we can all do that. Okay. All right. So in an academic paper, in your writing, there's an introduction or literature review to start. Then there's going to be methodology. Ariel mentioned that. This is important because it describes what you did, how you did things, and how somebody else could do the same thing. So if I have bad methods, the peer reviewers will say the methods were bad, so the results are bad. So make sure your methods are good. And that's probably the most important. The first thing to do is get good methods. Results should describe the findings, why it's important, and present the data. And that's where you might have tables, figures, data, also writing description of what you found. But then in the discussion, we need to go beyond description, right? We need to say, why is this relevant? Why is this important? what might this mean? If we look at the paper here, we ask, can herding and mining coexist? And so in the discussion, we talk about, yes, this is why, but these are the challenges in the Gobi region. Okay, so this is where you make your key points, is in the discussion. This is where you're really going to tell the audience why this is important and how it advances information. And then you have a conclusion to draw the introduction and the research together. Okay, literature review. This is the key to do early in your process. It's to prepare the research, get the best evidence and documentation on the topic. It shows up in your reference list. Ariel mentioned it many times about citation, and grounding your research, reading all you can, identify the current knowledge, but also you can reach to the past, what we used to consider, in the future, what we can also consider. To define your topic, so you need to be systematic. Have a plan for your literature review. Are you doing it by topic, like pastoralism in Mongolia? Be organized. If I go pastoralism, then vegetation, and then governance in Mongolia, it might be too much or disorganized. Use academic search terms, clear, repeatable again. Okay. And your literature review is going to define your research question. And you're going to do this by scoping exercises where you develop your criteria. You're going to explain this in your methods, how you searched, what terms did you use. Then you're going to identify the relevant current authoritative literature. And think of keywords, think of databases, time period. I like to do contemporary research. Maybe you want to do something like Taka, he writes about pastoralism in the socialism era. That's fine. So he's going to have different search terms than me. Also, think of acronyms. People like say BRI all the time. What's BRI? Okay, Belt and Road Initiative. So if I'm searching, maybe I'll put in BRI, maybe I'll put in Belt and Road, China's Belt and Road, China's One Belt, One Road. Try many different terms because different papers will use this differently. You'll find different results this way. See who cited the papers, see which ones sound that you might like, and discuss with other people. Talk to Ariel, talk to Buho, talk to Munku, and they might have some ideas on where to find good literature. Okay, so I always start by reading the abstract. I think Ariel does too. Then I check the introduction. That's going to be pretty short. Does it have the words I identify? Is it about climate? Is it about Zud? And if not, then okay, then I don't waste my time on the rest of the article. And then if I like the introduction, I go to the conclusion. This is what it's found. And only then do I print the paper. Then I want to read it. So there's not enough time to read everything. So you got to be focused and read what's most useful for your topic. Is the argument clear? What are we talking about? What are the authors trying to tell us? If it's not clear, then I don't want to read it. Evaluate the sources. Is it relevant to my topic? How is the argument structured? Maybe that informs you in your writing. Relationships, trends. Is the source credible? Does it have an impact factor? Is it from Taylor and Francis Publishings that I know, like Mukherjee's article was? And then if I read several papers, do they all say the same thing? Are there differences? Why are there? And then after I've done some reading, what's missing? What are the gaps? What can you fill in? Where does your research fit with the existing research? So it's very important to identify the gap. So when we do this paper, we know the herders are complaining, the mine's not paying attention. Why? Nobody writes about it. They say, okay, the mine causes dust. We have some facts like that, but we haven't figured out academically what are the key features. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, one question.
And you're doing reading, in theoretical, in theory, there is lots of theories and channels. And would you prefer to start from the article journals, or would you prefer to read books of the,
Okay. I like to start with the articles because books take a long time to read. And when you read the articles, if one book keeps coming up, let's say this person cites mining life cycles, that one mining life cycle, why not? Okay, then I might go to the book. I always start with the articles because it's more compact. If I know I'm writing about mining in the desert and pastoralists, that's what I want. Books are usually going to be more general. So I don't want to read the whole book if this is my interest. Ariel, what do you say? Okay, so Ariel's similar. Books are good foundational research, maybe before you decide your topic. When your topic, we need to zoom in some. So peer review, this is the quality control, you might say. This is where people test out your product, test out your paper. So they are experts, right? So they know when I talk about testing water, or maybe I'll talk about socioeconomic interviews. They have some ideas of their own. When you write a paper, most journals ask you to suggest a reviewer. So I can think, oh, Fuho knows about this. There's remote sensing. Maybe I should put him. Or maybe Enkbot, who also knows remote sensing. Or maybe someone in the U.S. In Colorado, we have many people who know about Mongolia. So you want good people who might understand your topic. They comment on the paper. Sometimes it's one paragraph. Oh, this is good. You need to change the conclusion, and you need to mention, Lake Ulan Nur. Others, I've had some 7 pages long. So many things that we must address. Or maybe I disagree with the reviewer. I say, reviewer 1 and 2 liked this, so I will keep it in the paper. But it takes some time. But this is part of the process. Then the journal says they accept, or they want to review. There might be minor revisions, which is good, or there may be major revisions. One time it took me almost as long to do the major revisions as to write the paper. It took more than a month. So just be aware that these are part of the process. Or they may say reject. Reject and resubmit, which means rewrite the paper, or reject. Or they may say, reject, it does not fit this journal. That's okay. Then you can submit somewhere else. Also, you can only submit to one journal at a time. Some people years ago tried submitting to many journals to see who accepted first. But now you always need to sign, I've only submitted it to this journal. And the process suggests how to improve the research, writing, figures, structure, and to connect the work with other related research. Peer review can take several months. I submitted a paper in April. It's August now. I have not heard. So when I go home, I will write the journal editors what's happening to the paper. Is the review finished? Then usually it comes back to us and we have a month to make the changes. Because the journals also, they want new articles. It's their business. So it's a commitment when you write a paper, and we all must also do the revisions quickly. Okay, predatory journals. Predatory, the name should tell you it's bad, okay? They take advantage of people. Because we must publish, some journals have no impact factor. They want you to submit to them and they charge you. Okay, and do you recognize these journals? I always like to check the journal's homepage, see what their impact factor is. And they send emails. Okay, Nomadic Peoples, Erдэm, they never sent me an email saying, Troy, please publish with us. Anybody that asks me, I'm suspicious of, right? And then if they have a please publish or send a book chapter, then often they'll have a name but no address. If there's no address, how can I check up this company? Those are all suspicious items, okay? So just say anybody who emails you is probably not serious. They're trying to make money from you. And if you publish in a predatory journal, it is not helpful. And if I see a student or an applicant with predatory journals, like the Journal of Arid Environments and Geographical Disasters, okay, that doesn't exist. So I know the paper is probably not very good. And I know the person is probably not so trustful or responsible academically. So really watch out for predatory journals. And if you have any questions, you can ask us, your professors, other people, but check their own website. There's an impact factor list. There's many ways to check a journal. And there's other things like site source and that are not an impact factor. It doesn't say IF, it's not an impact factor. So that's a good quality control. Anybody who wants you to pay and you have not heard of, watch out. It's not respected. That's different. Many journals, like this journal, Land, they will charge $1,800 to publish a paper. So it's a real journal. It has an impact factor, but I'm not going to pay $1,800. So I write to them, and in the end, they do not charge me. You could write to them too and say, I'm from Mongolia. It's a developing country. We have no funding to pay for the journal. Can you accept it? And they can. They will. So open access means somebody's paying. Maybe you, in our case, the University of Oxford might pay. So that's fine. But it's different than a predatory journal. They usually want $280 or $450, like random amounts. So a good journal wants a lot of money. But be very cautious of anybody who sends you an email. Okay, that's not how it works. I've never done one of those myself. Okay, that's the lecture part. And now we'll go on to an exercise. And I'm going to give you an example in a minute. But what we're going to do is at your desk, pick a research topic, or I can give you a research topic, small groups, and we're going to use the information pyramid. And what we want is just give us the theme you're talking about, then what a YouTube version might be, a newspaper or TV version, something you might see in your university class, and an academic paper. So I'll give you a quick example. Okay. So this is about crows. And reviewing information on crows, consider what is interesting, what is convincing, and what would you put in your paper. And so my theme is crows are intelligent. Okay. So this comes from 2,600 years ago. Aesop. Maybe you've heard of him. He wrote many fables. The crow in the pitcher. So in a spell of dry weather, when birds could find very little to drink, a thirsty crow found a pitcher with a little water in it. But the pitcher was high and it had a narrow neck, and no matter how he tried, the crow could not reach the water. The poor thing felt as if he must die of thirst. Then an idea came to the crow. Picking up some small pebbles, he dropped them into the pitcher one by one. With each pebble, the water rose a little higher until at last it was near enough that he could drink. So we might say in English, necessity is the mother of invention. So in my paper on crow intelligence, I may cite this in my introduction to give some context, to give some history, right? To establish that crows have intelligence over this long period of time. Okay, I used the same topic and I looked at YouTube. This is what YouTube might tell me. A crow and a cat are friends. Okay, sure, that's interesting. Cute picture, but is this going to be useful for your academic article? Just think about it. Does this tell you anything about crow intelligence? It might even tell me the crow's a little bit foolish because the cat might want to eat him next. Right? So it's not very useful for academics. So YouTube's off the list. Okay. Next we go to Encyclopedia Britannica. Okay, so more serious. Highly intelligent. Crows are masterful mimics. They can learn to count aloud. That is amazing for a crow. They can learn 100 words, 50 sentences. That's really impressive. They imitate their owner's voice to call dogs. I mean, okay, they're very clever, but how do we know this, right? They also say they're pranksters and they're calculating thieves. That's something bad. But do we have any citations? Did this person just write this and make it up? We don't know. So they're very bright, but this is general background information on crows. It's interesting, like tool use, but how do they know this? So I'm not going to cite this in my paper on crows because it's not provable. How can we repeat any of this? Okay, next this is Daily Mail. This is the most popular newspaper in the UK. Ravens is spies. Ravens a type of crow. Okay, I'm reading it. During the Cold War, the CIA tried to train crows to spy on the Soviets, the Russians. Well, that's really interesting, but what do we know about that? And one crow called Duda was trained to carry loads and fight off attackers, and he was part of the CIA program. He could even fly out 6 miles into over water to spy on boats or other things of the Soviets. And he was, as it says, the star of the project. And he could figure out the right altitudes to fly, the right winds. So very smart, but alas, in the end, he was attacked by other birds. Okay, so even crows have challenges. So academically, who's going to believe me if I write this? My crow with a CIA spy. I don't know. Spy birds, it's emotional, it's journalistic, it's in a newspaper, but it won't even convince my mother. Okay, so I'm not going to use it. Then we get a little better. This TV report, crows officially smarter than children. Wow. Maybe you have some children, like maybe you should have a crow instead. They're so smart. And they're like 7 to 10-year-old children. I didn't know that. And they do cause and effect of water displacement. Just think, we're back to Aesop's fables, right? It's the same thing. But it goes on, Sarah Gilbert at the University of Auckland. She talks about how bright crows are. And then Karina at the University of California also talks about how bright crows are. Okay, it's getting better. We have 2 people we can talk about. The University of California. I went to the University of California, so it's a good institution. So I trust it. We should read their research for our paper. Okay, we're getting better. Now we go to the Guardian UK, Queen of the Corvids. That's the crow family group. This came out just a couple months ago. And it even says in the very first line, an experiment started with Aesop's fable, crow in the picture. So really, maybe science hasn't changed over 2,600 years. That's pretty amazing in itself. But he talks about manipulating water, using tools. And she says, I always had big respect for the birds. Clayton says, but I was stunned by how intelligent they were. So good, I'm interested. Now I have Clayton, I can go see her article. She also says in the journal, in the Guardian, and Clayton says, and the crow learned to say, I love you. That's so sweet. Is it repeatable? Will a crow love me too? I don't know. So think about that. It's not repeatable, so I can't write about the crows loving me. It's very, very sweet, but I don't know if it's repeatable. And here's the article here. It's free online. So from this, we go to the article. And look at the name already. The Mentality of Crows, Convergent Evolution of Intelligence of Corvids and Apes. Science is one of the 2 best journals out there. So now I know it's serious. It's been well peer-reviewed. And I know that we're comparing crows and apes. And we know apes are thought to be very smart because of similarities to humans. So we're getting much better, and we have some of the same things about social animals. They understand the physical and social world. It suggests complex cognition, and that they have causal reasoning, flexibility, imagination, and prospection. Okay, so all the steps are given to do this experiment. We can repeat it. I don't have any crows, so maybe I couldn't. It has 63 references. Excellent. I really enjoyed the paper. I enjoyed it so much, I looked up the author and read 3 more papers on crows and their intelligence. So here's the address there. Okay, so you can see the pyramid from YouTube to science. So now in your small groups, you can pick any topic or ask me, I'll give you a topic. It could be mining or social media or development of Mongolia. But just what would you find on YouTube? You can make it up. YouTube, maybe a newspaper, TV, a book, and finally, what's a scientific article? So you can be creative. So just think of the information pyramid on a subject of your choice. So just take a few minutes and then we'll get some of your ideas.